following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tony D'Angelo's PM Coast to Coast. Now, here's your host, Tony D'Angelo.
And a very good afternoon to you, all of our friends and fans up and down the stations of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I am Tony D'Angelo, the host of Tony D'Angelo's PM Coast to Coast. And today we're going to go back in time. You know, it's Super Bowl time right now, and people are talking about the current Super Bowl, the Rams versus the Patriots. But I'm going to take you back 50 years to a time when Joe Namath was playing against the Baltimore Colts in Miami in Super Bowl number 3. Our commemorated date, January 12th, 1969. We're not only going to commemorate Joe Namath, we're going to be commemorating everything taking place at that day. So this is really going to be a journey into Comfortably Zoned Boss Radio. I have a little commentary for you, and we're going to have a whole bunch of fun. So you guys just sit back, get ready to rock, and we're going to be coming back here with some incredible stuff. Got the grassroots doing the runway. This is a runway right to January 12th, 1969. We'll be right back right after this.
System serve New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. If you're within sound of my lovely voice, there's a beneficial finance office right near yours. See the white pages. Yeah, white pages of your phone.
John Surtees, Parnelli Jones,
These
Patrick,
are the men,
Jordan,
the drivers and mechanics dedicated to speed. Speed that comes from special fuel burning at high compression to drive the fastest racing machines built. These are the tracks. Some twist and turn. Others are built as ovals with high bank turns to counteract crushing G-forces. And the cars, pushed as far as steel and chrome and rubber can go. Cars that just began to breathe deeply at 200 miles an hour. The men, the tracks, the cars make the racing scene. Filmways and Cherokee Productions present The Racing Scene with guest drivers James Garner and Dick Smothers. Absolutely nothing was staged. Every moment is completely real and exactly as it happened in The Racing Scene. Distributed by Vernon Films, in color, rated G for general audiences.
Other than the Super Bowl, there were news events on January 12, 1969. We'll be right back with them right after this.
Now, here comes the music.
Do I look bothered?
Oh, you are awful, but I like you.
Just some of the news events on January 12, 1969. Frank Borman, actually more properly at that time, astronaut Frank Borman, he warns about flight issues on the upcoming moon mission, and such need to be taken care of if the mission is going to be successful. Sirhan Sirhan is criminally tried for the slaying of Robert F. Kennedy. Jethro goes crazy. Max Baer threatened 2 people with a shotgun in North Hollywood. Maybe they're after that corn liquor that Granny made. I'm not really sure, but you can look it up, as Casey Stengel would say. Richard Milhouse Nixon gets ready to be inaugurated as the 37th President of the United States. That seems so long ago. In Vietnam, the Viet Cong shelled an airbase in the Mekong Delta and killed 8. A Black Power riot is quelled in London. John Lindsay fights with City Council on the budget. What else is new in New York? They're always fighting over the budget. There's a dock strike, which is hopefully getting closer to settlement. During this time, there was a bad rampage of the Hong Kong flu. I know I had it. It was not fun, kids. And the Senate grills Nixon appointees for cabinet seats. History will show us they should have grilled a whole lot harder. We'll be back with more of January 12th, 1969, and more stuff right after this.
Charge! Hey, look alive! Everything lights up, makes you want to shout. Talk about happiness.
Sunday afternoon at Raceway Thursday. Fabulous Eliminator action down the quarter mile stretch. Plus, complete class elimination. Children under 12 free. Unlimited free parking. Gates open at 8 in the morning. Eliminations begin at 1 Sunday afternoon. At Raceway Park, Englishtown, New Jersey.
Thank you, Rotten Little Rodent. Raceway Park will remain open Sundays through November the 24th.
We'll be back for some commentary on Comfortably Zoned Boss Radio right after this.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
And for today's commentary, I would like to talk a little bit about sports announcers gone by. When I was doing my research for this particular piece of January 12, 1969, I noted that Curt Gowdy, the legendary Curt Gowdy, and Kyle Rote were the announcers for Super Bowl number 3. And I thought about Kyle Rote. I was a little young to see him as a player. I actually went to a New York Giants game when I was probably, I might have been like 6 years old. I was with my mother and my brother, and it was Kyle Rote Day when he was being honored, and that's all I remember. But I remember being very frightened and just wanting to go home, and that's probably the only thing I remember was Kyle Rote Day. But I really don't remember Kyle Rote as a player. However, I do remember him as a sportscaster and as a newscaster and a broadcaster. And Mr. Rote had a very nice career for many years with WNBC in New York. He actually was the, shall we say, and our paterfamilias, Zig Tycho and I talk about this a lot. He actually was the inspiration for Frank Gifford getting into the broadcasting business. And this was a guy who was a handsome man. He was well-spoken and did a very credible job as an announcer. Now, Howard Cosell, of course, would always talk about the jockocracy and the fact that, you know, just because somebody is a former player, they should not be immediately allowed in the booth. And I understood completely where Howard was coming from with respect to that. You know, people like Howard trained to be broadcasters. They weren't converts, even though Howard himself was a convert from another profession, the law. But with that being as it is, I grew up during a time when there were a number of fine broadcasters who were ex-players. I think back to Joe Garagiola. I think back to Phil Rizzuto. Yes, a character, but nonetheless one who applied himself to be a terrific performer. I think back to Ralph Kiner, who would always send us to our dictionaries in New York with his use of $10 words. I think back to Tom Brookshire. I think back to Pat Summerall. I think back to Frank Gifford, who applied himself. I think back to Herb Score. And these are people, and there's so many others, and these are people who, Joe Nuxall, and these are people who worked hard to become broadcasters and to be a credible presence in the booth. Now, today it seems that anybody who can kind of handle a microphone gets a job with a network. Tony Romo is a notable exception, being one who... whether it comes easy or he's working very hard at it, he's doing an absolutely terrific job. But there are so many people who were broadcasters just by virtue of being ex-players, and I think they do themselves a disservice. I think they do the game a disservice. I think that if a former player can apply himself to be a fine commentator, this is another dimension to the game. It is a dimension of wisdom. It is a dimension of the player's versatility. And plus, I think we fans and we participants can learn a whole lot from that if these players are such that they really, 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 really apply themselves to be broadcasters. Now, I think that the climate of social media, and I think of ESPN, and a number of other things have more or less kind of diluted this whole thing just to get a whole lot of people out there. And today, and Zig and I and other of my brethren on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network have discussed this, that the reason we're here is we all felt we could do better than someone else, so we're here. But we're trying to do our best. And that all said, I really miss the days when players would actually become broadcasters and apply themselves. Frank Gifford, as just one example, would take 3x5 cards the day of the game, and on every single 3x5 card he would put whoever the players were, whoever the two teams were, say Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, the player, his number, his position, his school, and some little fact about him that Frank Gifford had researched either in a library or a newspaper or something like that. Research in those days, kids, was a whole lot more difficult because it didn't come to your fingertips on a computer. You actually had to make a trip downtown and go to something called the Reader's Guide for Periodic Literature and look at old magazines and look at old newspapers to see what was happening. But Frank Gifford actually during the broadcast was really, really great in bringing up some little tidbits should somebody apply on camera and, catch a pass or make a tackle or, block a pass or intercept a pass or something like that. So I really long for the days when we would see people like Mr. Rote and Mr. Garagiola and Mr. Kiner and Mr. Rizzuto, but I'm not so sure we're ever going to see them. Nonetheless, we will continue to do our best for you fans here on Comfortably Zoned Radio, doing the best that we know how. And that's my opinion. Whatever yours is, I'd like to know. In any event, I'll be back in 60 seconds.
The beneficial way is the right way to do when you want cash. Here's the thing to do.
Call Beneficial for cash to clean up bills, take advantage of sales and bargains, or for any good reason. At Beneficial, you pick the terms. You pick the payment.
Get that big okay at Beneficial. Get that big okay. Okay.
Some more of the events on January 12th, 1969. On TV, you had your choice of Gunsmoke, Jacques Cousteau, The Underwater World, I Dream of Jeannie, Perry Mason, or Carol Burnett. If you were a kid like me in New York, you had your choice of, count them, seven whole television channels. In the movies, we had Patricia Neal in The Subject Was Roses, the 30th anniversary performance of Gone with the Wind with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft, and the lovely, beautiful, I'm Still in Love with Her, Catherine Ross, and The Brotherhood with Kirk Douglas. And we had a whole lot happening. We'll be coming back with more stuff and more of January 12th, 1969, right after this. We'll be back with our comfortably zoned Boss Radio world-famous baseball birthdays right after this. I get a lot of mail doing this show. Some of it is hate mail, some of it is threats. Some of it I cannot repeat on this polite network. But one of the things is very clear to me. Regardless of what is happening in this world, I have to do the baseball birthdays. There are many people who are waiting for their birthday to be read. Otherwise, they will kill me, and if they kill me, I can't read it. So, some famous baseball players born on January 12th. Dontrelle Willis, a pitcher, 9 years in Major League Baseball. We kind of hoped he would be better. Had some brilliant years and kind of fell off. He's only 37 his last birthday. Amazing. We really thought he was going to be something incredibly spectacular. Randy Jones, a fine man who I've had the pleasure of interviewing from Fullerton, California. Cy Young winner, 10 years in the bigs. He blew out 69 candles on his last birthday on January 12th. And get this, Gene Martin, 1 year, 9 games with the 1968 Washington Senators, was 72 this last birthday, and Gene played those games and was never heard from again. So we wish Dontrelle, Randy, and Gene Martin a wonderful belated birthday. We'll be back with more of January 12th, 1969, right after this. In the sports, on January 12th, 1969, needless to say, the Jets won the Super Bowl 16-7, beating the Baltimore Colts. A Matt Snell touchdown and 3 field goals were the scoring for the Jets. The Boston Bruins beat the Penguins in Boston 8-4, and Willie the Shoemaker, came back to ride after rehab. Such a wonderful time. Later that year, we'd have the Moonwalk and we'd have the Mets. And it was just a wonderful time. We'd have Woodstock and just so many things happening in 1969. We'll be right back right after this.
Your hair has a complexion just like your face. Too much detergent can dry it up the way it dries your skin. But there's one leading shampoo without a synthetic detergent base. Breck shampoo. It takes care of your hair's complexion the same gentle way beauty soap takes care of your skin's complexion, by helping leave in the natural oils that keep hair soft. Breck shampoo, now in plastic bottles. It's beauty soap for your hair's complexion.
Lots of people to thank here on January 12th, 1969. Joe Namath, the Beneficial Finance Company. I just had to stick it to them because they offered me a job when I got out of college. And they wanted me to do shakedowns in Norwalk. Probably why they went out of business. Because there was a bunch of scared women in the office that wouldn't go out and do it. And they wouldn't give me $20 more a week. Well, sirs, you're right. Glad you're here to sponsor my show. The Boston Bruins and Richard Nixon. Now we can't thank him. Anyway, remember the mission of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Take your slightly used children's books and donate them to a Project Head Start near you. Kids need to read and kids need to think. So for all of the contributors and the jocks here on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network and me, Tony D'Angelo, wishing you a great week. Kayuskide. Bye. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Dan Ingram.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.